preparative HPLC. Little theory on that. HPLC is short for high performance liquid chromatography. There are two types of high performance liquid chromatography. There is analytical and preparative. Preparative HPLC is used to separate, purify, and collect target compounds from a mixed solution. There are two phases, the mobile phase, which is nonpolar, and the stationary phase, which is polar. One thing to know about the stationary phase is that it controls selectivity and production rate. HPLC is used to produce a pure compound as easily and quickly as possible. So there are different parts to an HPLC setup. There's the solvent selection and delivery, the sample injection, the column selection and thermostat, the detection section, and fraction collection. And we're going to go a little bit more into detail. So the solvent selection and delivery. Multiple solvent selectors allow the number of solvents to increase, which then allows the system to be configured for multiple things such as acid runs, neutral washes, and basic runs without having to change the solvent bottle. So it makes it a little bit more easier. We have the sample injection. Depending on the machine you have, there are manual and automated injections. The main effectors for a sample injection are precision, accuracy, and carryover. Now, for column selection and thermostat, different columns allow for isolation, it prevents carryover, and as well as it prevents spills. Now, with temperature plays a critical role in separation and retention. Increase in temperature decreases the viscosity of the mobile phase and increases in production rate. Now, with detection, there are various detector types for various flow rates, depending on the machine you have. Fraction collection, there is the fraction collection diverts the flow from the detector into the fraction collector, and it could be up to 1,000 milliliters per minute. One thing to note, the difference between a preparative HPLC and an analytical HPLC is that with a preparative, the fraction collection diverts the flow into a fraction collector, while in an analytical HPLC, it diverts the flow into a waste. So a little bit more parts are the solvent reservoir glass or stainless steel. Then you have the pump, which requires high eluent flow rate. One thing to note is a large piston head is required to work at flows of 10 to 100 milliliters per minute. Then we have the preparative injector. It injects samples within 0.1 to 100 milliliters, and a rheodyne injector is used. We have the preparative columns. Remember, different columns. Columns are the heart of liquid chromatography, and one thing with preparative HPLC is the columns have a disc with radial slots. Now the detectors. HPLC eluent is diluted with more mobile phase and is passed through the detector. Now with the fraction collector, we said that with preparative HPLC, it diverts it into a fraction collector, but it diverts the flow using a fraction collection needle. So, application of the preparative HPLC. Pharmaceutical companies, biopharma, and other chemical industries do use preparative HPLC. They use the preparative HPLC for impurity analysis and recovery collection. These industries use preparative HPLC because when producing a pure compound, there can be side products and impurities that can affect the chemical activity. These effects can have huge effects on the chemical product as a whole. So HPLC is a rather expensive technique, so it's most commonly used on expensive and rare products. Last but not least, some strengths and limitations. So the capacity of a preparative HPLC is usually between 10 to 500 milligrams. It's good to use preparative HPLC when needing to fraction high purity in large quantities of a compound that are required for evaluation analysis and are also as well processed in a short amount of time. It is also good to use when needing precise, accurate results. Like I said before, with pharmaceutical companies and stuff, with impurities, it can lead to effects in the chemical activity and toxicity. So when needing precise, accurate results, that's when you would use a preparative HPLC. Now, one thing to note, it's not good to use a preparative HPLC when the products are inexpensive, the compound is not needed in a short amount of time, and as well when using a small scale. Preparative HPLC is a technique that's usually done using a larger scale, so it's not ideal to use when you're using a smaller scale. And those are some references, and that is about it.